Hey everybody, and welcome back to Dude's Brunch. It's a podcast about pop culture, internet garbage, and black coffee. I'm your host, Taylor Olstead, and with me this week, it's Tyler Reed. Tyler, what'd you have for brunch today?
Hey everybody. It's good to be back. I never left, but I digress. So, as we follow up from last week, I'm still working at Coffee Emporium, and I worked again. So, today, I tried to spice things up, so I had a waffle. Because they do waffles on the weekend, and so one of the people that cooks food was like, "I've been experimenting with this parfait waffle. You should have it." And I was like, "Okay, I'm in." So it was a half waffle that had like yogurt and like granola and strawberries and banana on it, and I also had a chicken soft taco wrap. So my brunches are going to be very polar opposites from here on out. So,
well, was the parfait waffle good?
It was not too bad. I thought the yogurt was a strange addition, but I think if maybe I had not let it sit out for like 10 minutes while I was doing something else and had like slapped it on there cold, hot, before everything kind of congealed together to be a warm, I think it would have been pretty interesting. I would say it would be good to experiment with the mixture. Definitely not syrup, though. For the love of God. That sounds really bad.
Sure does. Ben Pentecost is here.
Oh.
Ben, what did you have for brunch today?
I did not have brunch today. I worked from 7 to 1, and I got up late, so I forgot to eat. But I work at a sushi bar, so I snuck some rice in while I was making those rolls at 7:30 a.m. And I also had, of course, some coffee.
Rice and coffee. Living the dream. And Zach Schockweiler is with us. Zach, what did you have for brunch today?
I had sausage, toast, fried eggs, and some hash browns, courtesy of my grandma, and it was really good.
Sounds
made
delicious.
With love and care. Yeah.
Well, as I said, I'm your host, Taylor, and for brunch this morning, I had some hash browns, scrambled eggs, and homemade banana bread, because I'm super domestic this weekend.
Back on that bullshit again. Back on the banana bread.
I am back on that banana bread life because I bought way too many bananas last week.
That's right, for your smoothies. So when your bananas get all brown and soggy, you put them in that banana bread.
Right, and I also put some berries in that banana bread, so it's like a banana berry bread. It's legit.
A banana bread.
And of course, coffee, obviously.
There's too many bees.
Get
Just
over
throw
it.
that out there.
Whatever. You ate rice for breakfast. I don't want to hear it from you.
I'm sorry that I work 6 days a week.
Oh, well,
Nice.
Ben, he works 6 days a week.
Yeah, man. I have 3 days off this week, and I'm still working 55 hours.
I don't know how that's possible.
It sucks. It's horrible.
It sounds like labor laws are being broken.
Well, we're not here to talk about any of that.
Right. The crumbling state of our economy.
No, sir. No. So we're here because Zach wanted to convene a panel of emo experts to discuss probably the biggest emo moment of 2017. I think I'm justified in saying that, right, Zach?
Yeah, even though I don't know, I'm weird about like calling this emo, even though it is emotional. But it's like when I think emo, I think of like Dashboard Confessional or stuff that's like a little bit more surface level. I feel like there's a lot of layers to this album, and
I don't think that's
works.
fair to say that all emo music is surface level, and I would say that that's probably just a bias more so than...
I immediately thought this was emo. As a non-brand new fan, that was my first impression.
Well, I'm too old and withered to fight it, so...
I mean, for the just because I guess we're gonna get semantics involved at the first second of this fucking conversation.
Well, I want to get it out of the way. Before we even get started.
Right.
Because I know that people listening to this podcast are going to be like, oh, they're talking about emo. I don't like that. That's boring. That's awful. Like, emo's dead, all this stuff. But when Zach kind of pitched this topic to me, I was really interested in it because I think all of us having grown up, around the emo scene or as a part of it, this album feels kind of like a nail in the coffin to a particular style and period of music in a way. And so I thought it would be a really interesting discussion to have. And if you're listening to this and you weren't or aren't a fan of emo music, then I hope this is still informative for you. Maybe kind of a look at where the genre has gone since Dashboard Confessional and My Chemical Romance.
And just so we're clear, Wikipedia says alternative rock, indie rock, post-hardcore, emo, and pop punk. So
Emo is in that list.
Those are all valid labels.
At least one, some or all of those things. So
guys, Wikipedia is user-submitted content. All right.
That's right. So no one would be more professional than the audience, right?
Oh, fuck, logic. Whoa, I'm fucked.
So, Zach, what is this that we're talking about?
In terms of the album itself?
Yeah, we never actually said, so you have to tell
the
people.
Oh, do we not?
Yeah.
Oh, man. This is a professional show where I'm a professional, guys. Yeah, it's the album is Science Fiction by Brand New. It is supposed to be their last album. For those who aren't familiar, Brand New's first album was, what was it, 2000? Your favorite album was like 2000, I think, with the hit single Jude Law and A Semester Abroad, in which they were just straight up pop punk emo. And they started then, and they've been doing this since then, and this is supposed to be their last album because they, for whatever reason, put a date on when they wanted to break up as a band, which is next year.
Oh, shit. Well, they are.
And here they are. And this, I feel, is much like Taylor said, it's actually a good nail in the coffin for the genre, but also it's a very fitting end to this band if this is truly the end, which, I mean, if it is, hey, I'm fine with it. Everything's got to end sometime.
So that's something that we've talked about on this show before, because we have what is now a very out-of-date episode where we talked about LCD Soundsystem calling it quits. And of course, LCD Soundsystem is now back together. But in preparing for this topic, I did re-listen to both this album and the new LCD Soundsystem album as kind of like a compare and contrast of bands that say they're breaking up. And I think it's really interesting, like, looking back on it, this album, Science Fiction, feels so much more final than anything that LCD Soundsystem has done. And, like, they're a very self-aware band as well, but I feel like you really get the message on this album that, like, this is the end of Brand New. Or at least I did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
I don't know.
Well,
what did you guys think of that?
I would say that, I think just even, like, genre-wise, I would say that it makes much more sense for a band that's sort of like this in the way that they've approached releases. It's much more intentional. Like, they've pretty much released albums when they probably felt like they needed to. Like, because if I'm looking at the album covers of these, and I'm like, I distinctly remember them, and I distinctly remember people really liking each one of them. Whereas LCD Soundsystem, they're more electronic. They can do remixes. They can do all sorts of stuff that kind of, essentially keeps them, relevant for like a, just sort of like a.
There's a longer lifespan on that music.
Yeah, whereas this is going to be an album that's going to change your life in some way. If it impacts you the right way, and so there's less stuff, but it means more when they release it. Whereas LCD Soundsystem could really just keep going indefinitely with collaborations and stuff like that. Just kind of how their genres work. So it makes sense that LCD Soundsystem's like, fuck it, let's just do another one. Whereas Brand New has to, like, I feel like probably put in a lot of work because they put a lot of time and effort into these albums. Not to say that LCD Soundsystem doesn't, but it just feels that way with the way that they release their music.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So preface to this, I'm not really a Brand New fan. I never really got into them. But like, I'm aware of the impact they've had on my friends and my social group and whatever. But I agree with Tyler. I think they all seem to be very deliberate, from what I understand about it. I looked at the album covers too right now, and I can like distinctly picture all of them as like a certain period of time. And I remember like it came out and everyone's like, oh, this is this Brand New album. And I remember like the what is the one, The Devil and God Are Raging Inside Me. I remember that came out, and like that it's like the images of the album, and then I have like specific thoughts from those albums that come to mind. And I think this one kind of it goes with that, where it's like it's not like it's supposed to accomplish something, but it seems like there was like, it's very purposeful music, and it's composed very thoroughly.
As a diehard brand new fan, Zach, does that line up with kind of how you experience them?
Yeah, because it's kind of like going back to what Tyler was saying. Their releases are so few and far between. Like this album took 7 years. I think it was 7 years to come out. Like 7 fucking years, and it's like holy. And they didn't even like make a big deal about it. They literally just released it, and their production company was like, "Hey, it's out," and everyone lost their fucking minds. Which. Oh man, but yeah, definitely, man.
Do you know how they sustain themselves for that period of time? Like,
I have no idea. I should have looked it up. Like, I don't. That's the thing. I love them, but like, I'm not the type of fan that like looks up their personal lives or anything, or like what they do for work outside. I presume that most of them are probably some sort of audio engineering or something to that effect, like most band people are.
Sure.
Yeah, like they do some production for other bands or whatever. Yeah.
So they more or less they're in the business, but they are not actively they're not in the studio literally for 7 years making this album.
Yeah. Yeah. Like
this isn't like a Chinese democracy situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. I presume there's probably like a lot of like demos and songs that we'll never hear because they're from what I understand, and don't quote me on this, but it probably will be quoted because I'm recording it right now. But they when Devil and God, before that came out, there was a bunch of leaked demos that went out, and I guess Jesse Lacey was like really bummed about it because I guess he likes the secret. He doesn't like having anything that's unfinished like come out. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's like a whole other album's worth of like work from this past like time frame before this came out either. So I don't know. It's interesting. I'd love to like see. I wish there was like a documentary of their process because it's hard to think of a lot of bands who have this type of not necessarily lull, but just spacing between each of their albums. And each album has been pretty good quality, both recording and songwriting wise. So it's, I don't know, whatever they're doing, it's paying off.
Yeah, in that way, it kind of reminds me of Say Anything. I feel like they both have that kind of like frontman who is like the auteur of the band and really guides the creative direction of the album. And so much of it is based on like that person's emotional state and kind of where they are in life in that moment, which makes these albums like really difficult to write and really like complicated to put together, if that makes sense. I don't know if anybody's listened to the most recent Say Anything album, which I can't think of the name of off the top of my head.
Something Because It Is or something to that effect.
Yeah. But it's another album much like this where I feel like this is a cohesive whole that's trying to make like a very strong point. I don't think it is. It's what it's called. And I think like that kind of songwriting where you're like intentionally sitting down and writing a cohesive album doesn't happen a whole lot anymore. And I was really happy to see that on this brand new album.
Side note, Say Anything has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Has like 6 albums? That's nuts.
Yeah. They've kind of been around forever.
Yeah. As a non-listener of Brand New, I listened to the songs that, basically that Zach suggested. And, on first listen, I enjoyed it. Or I gained some value out of it. I was like, oh, this is fine. And then Catherine was listening next to me, and she's like, there just doesn't feel like there's any sort of like climax. It doesn't feel like there's like a, like much movement in terms of like, I guess, arranged and sort of like the composition like thing. Like you don't feel like there's like a thing that they're trying to say. And I'm like, oh, I don't know if that's necessarily true, but that's fine. But it does feel like a lot of it is very like, this definitely isn't a traditionally composed, like their work isn't very, I would say, what am I trying to say?
It doesn't follow, it follows traditional song structures, but the album doesn't feel like it has the kind of like up, down, roller coaster feeling of a traditional rock album. Is that what you're trying to say?
Right, yes. And it not that it feels the same, but it feels like, you're really kind of like, it's kind of like a zone. You kind of, it's more of like, more... Yeah, it's obviously it's not like a fucking like Smash Mouth album. It's just it's not. You're not there to have like a great time. It's like you're really trying to get into like almost this meditative or this sort of reflective state. And I think that it feels like that makes a lot of sense here. And so what I would say is maybe like, what is how do I learn to appreciate this? or how can I like look at this? Like, what kind of perspective can I have to look at this to kind of like understand like the value in this album that is overwhelmingly we could say sad or sort of melancholy.
Well, the way that I've taken it, because like I kind of view it as an actual direct sequel to The Devil and God or Raging Inside Me, which that has like a ton of like songs about, it sounds like so fucking dumb to say this, but about being sad, and now but with like narratives and things like that. But this is like, that was like an interesting time frame because that was when they were like 30, I think. Yeah, that was like almost, yeah. Jesus, that album was like 10 years ago. Oh my God, I'm almost dying. I'm almost dead. I'm like almost 30. But that had a lot of things about like, kind of internal demons and things like that and trying to fight those off. And this kind of like returns back to it because Daisy was kind of interesting. Like that had some themes of that, but it was, I don't think Jesse wrote the lyrics, and it was a little bit more aggressive. And this kind of, I don't know, I'm kind of word vomiting right now. The point is, it's basically just the way I've perceived it in terms of like what it's supposed to be and how to kind of like approach it when you're listening to it and what it's about is that it's clearly about a guy who's at a point in his life where he is trying to just accept where he is and who he is, because the actual, just for context, the last song, Batter Up, which I think is one of the ones I told you guys to listen to, is from what I've gathered and what from Genius and a bunch of other people have pretty much gathered as well, is pretty much about Jesse Lacey trying to just deal with his mental like health and everything and where he is in life, because there's so many things he actually like wanted to do in life, and he didn't apparently think that Brand New was going to be his whole life, but it was, and he just kind of did it because it just seemed like the right thing to do. But like now he has regrets, like because he spent so much time doing this band over the years, and there's just so many other things he could have done that he wanted to do but just didn't, but he's just trying to accept it. So that's kind of like really the capstone to the whole theme of the album, to me at least.
That song was actually one of the weakest moments of the album for me, and that might just be because I haven't listened to a ton of Brand New's back catalog. For me, the way that I've read this album, Tyler, is there's a moment in, I think it's the fourth song, but there's a lot of spoken word samples on this record, and I believe it's at the end of Could Never Be Heaven, where it says like, we begin with psychotraumas or something like that. And the interpretations that I've read online that I totally agree with are like, the first half of this album, or at least the first 5 songs, are really about the author's kind of internal demons, like his mental health and his going to therapy and his conflicts with his religious upbringing and things like that. And then the last half of the album are much more external. It's his problems with the world around him, including with his audience, with his bandmates, with family. And so I think I like Zach's point about like he's assessing where he is in life at this moment. But I do think there's kind of like an interesting dichotomy on this album of the internal struggles of the songwriter versus the external ones. And personally, I find the internal ones a little bit more intriguing, but I think that's just me.
So maybe then what you're saying is that the reason to listen to this album is essentially for the lyrical content.
For me,
and that the music is also, we can assume that the music is good because we wouldn't be listening to it if it was the instruments playing and the whole thing wasn't cohesive and good. So we're assuming that as a baseline. So like, if you like this kind of music, then you would listen to it because it has a good sound. So then what you're saying is it's better to listen to it for the lyrical content. That's where the real value is seeing what he's saying and then pairing that obviously with the music and then trying to understand how he feels. And so, I mean, to be fair, that's not like a style that I have literally ever listened to music in the context of. So it's interesting, like I'm almost like, how do I even do that? Do I like literally have a sheet open, like the lyrics, and then listen to the song at the same time, and then like, you listen to it a lot and internalize it? I mean, I don't know.
If I could jump in, so because I listened to this since I I didn't really know what to expect coming into this, like listening to it for the first time. So I was a little more analytical about it, and I was more into the musical side of it than the lyrics. It's actually a really diverse album musically. It kind of doesn't sound like it because you're right. It kind of like just like it's on the same plane the whole time, and it just keeps going and going. It isn't really, there's not like a hill or valleys and whatever like most albums, but there's a lot of different harmonic vocabulary, and just like the way they compose the music and put it together, there's so many different influences I could hear in there, and that's what told the story for me, at least the way I was listening to it. And then I'm sure if I went back and listened to the lyrics more carefully, it would make like a lot more sense. But I got like the mood and the tone of the album, you could really hear it in the music and the way they put it all together.
That's such an interesting perspective, because that's literally like the thing that you care about, because your musical education now, right? That's what you're studying.
Yeah, I'm a musician. So
you're like, your job is now at this point you're kind of focusing on like, how can I tell people how to understand what a song is trying to do, like technically, rather than like. Because I feel like for me, I'm always talking like emotions, or I feel like we always talk about feelings or ideas, and like you're like, listen, there's a lot of interesting musical things happening here that make this album not only just good as like sonically, but also technically.
Well, I think the technical things are a part of what makes it so emotional, because they set the tone for the lyrics. The way he's singing it's sad anyway, but when you put the backup in the background of the audio or the sonic environment that's happening, it really like glues it all together, I feel like.
So what influences stand out to you then, Ben? You said there are a lot of diverse influences you're hearing there.
I heard the thing that stuck out to me the most. I don't know if this is a common thing in Brand New because I don't listen to them too much, but it sounded like a lot of like 90s grunge was in there. But there was also some really interesting like chord progressions that you wouldn't find in that kind of style of music. So like I heard some like jazz influence in the way the music moved, but like taken into the context of a grunge rock band, which I thought was really cool.
That's interesting because I, on a few of the tracks, heard a lot more folk and Western influence than I expected on this album.
I heard there's a lot of Eastern stuff too. Like I remember, which one was it? Out of Mana or Mana? I don't know how you pronounce it. Yeah, that one. It sounded like super like kind of mid-Eastern, like almost like I don't know, like almost Baltic kind of sounding. I'm sure you guys aren't familiar with that kind of music, but that's what it reminded me of.
So Zach, you said that you've spent a lot of time with this album over the last few months. How has it changed as you've spent more time with it?
It just made me, well, at first I listened to it, I was like, sweet, another Brand New album. I was like, this is great. And then it was like, it gave me a similar feeling as to whenever I would listen to Devil and God and everything. Like, and I'm trying to think of how to say this without sounding crazy. But essentially, over time, it just made me more depressed, if that makes sense. Because I've already been kind of like, without dropping a bunch of drama bombs, I've been kind of sad for a little bit, and this definitely pulled me down like deeper for a while. But at the same time, like listening to it more and more, it started to pull me back up again. It was an interesting like duality to it. Obviously due to the lyrics. So I don't know. It's now like it's an interesting thing. All I can really say because I just word diarrhea all the time. Sorry. I feel like I do that all the time on here. But I feel it basically brings me to a point where I relate, for what I know the album to be about, I relate to it. I relate to Jesse Lacey's like viewpoints and his struggles a lot right now. So
is there a particular like lyric or song that really stands out to you in that sense? Like, is there one that you're really like fixating on?
Yes, Waste, which I believe is track number 3. And from what I can gather, and most everyone else online on the message boards agree, is that it's like him talking to a younger version of himself, like Deja and Tandu era Jesse. And there's a lyric, I'm going to look it up just so I don't fuck it up. Yeah, here we go. So, I mean, just for the chorus itself is, every night you were tripping out, in the morning you were coming down. If it's breaking your heart, if nothing is fun, don't lose hope, my son. This is the last one. And and there's a pre-chorus on the second verse, and after the second verse, so second pre-chorus, where it goes, "I'm hoping that in time you can lay down all this weight you've been carrying around, and maybe one day you'll find your way to climb on up out of your grave with the bits of you managed to save, and for the last time, yeah, you say goodbye." And it's just like an interesting like thing where he's basically trying to forgive his younger self for like mistakes or regrets and things like that. And I don't know. I relate to that idea a lot, and it sucks because like I think especially in his case, he clearly dwells on a lot of like his past mistakes and stuff like that, and I do the same thing. So I don't know. That's yeah, that's the one that stands out to me. That particular song and that lyric.
So that's interesting that like for you when you're feeling like these sorts of emotions that you're like, I'm gonna turn to this sad music to make me. I guess it's sort of like, I guess, catharsis, I guess, in some ways.
I wish. I think I'm just like addicted to being sad sometimes. I think it's like worse than heroin. Not that I have the experience to tell, but I'd just being melodramatic.
Right, let's
guys.
cut that.
No, I mean, I can kind of identify that with that, though, because I feel like sometimes when you're in a particular emotional state, like, regardless of what it is, whether you're happy or sad or whatever, like, sometimes music can be used as therapy to change your mood, but other times, like, you want to use music to really, like, lean into the space that you're in that moment. And this feels like that kind of album. Like, this is music to listen to when you are not feeling your best.
Agreed.
See, but for me, I'm like, when I'm in that sad place, I'm like, I gotta like rip myself out of that. Like, I cannot like get more sad, like deal in that sadness, because that's just like, it doesn't do anything for me at all. Like, I mean, that's not what I guess what the music does for me. I think I have to listen to like, I have to go the opposite direction to kind of pull me out of that. So it's interesting. So if by that logic, I should then listen to sad music when I'm already kind of in a reasonably good mood. To then, you know, to reflect, to I guess to analyze that. I guess that would make sense.
Ben, any thoughts on that?
I understand that because I mean, music's a real emotional investment for me. So I have like specific songs that I'll listen to when I'm sad. I don't listen to music really to like make me feel the way I'm already feeling. It's just like when I'm sad and I listen to sad music, I do it because it makes me feel connected to something, you know, like there's like someone else felt like this way enough that they could put these feelings into a song, and I can relate to that. And that's when I listen to sad music. I can see like this music, this album specifically, I would probably not want to listen to when I was depressed, because this is like really sad album, obviously. And like clearly, like there's been a lot of emotional investment from the lyricist in this. But yeah, I don't know. I listen to it more for a sense of connection to the emotion than to actually feel the emotion, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I feel the same way you do, Ben, especially with kind of this like deeper, darker side of emo music. This album in particular really feels very similar to like MeWithoutYou and La Dispute for me in terms of like the emotional space it plays in. And those are bands that I listen to when I like want to connect to a very specific feeling. And I may not want to like dive into that feeling, so to speak, but it's like reassuring to hear someone else voice those kinds of feelings out loud. And I do find it really interesting that all three of those bands have like really intense ties to biblical imagery in their lyrics, which is something that really like interests and resonates with me, because I feel like somewhere along the way there just became this like sub-camp of the emo movement that's like really interested in loss of faith and like self-doubt and how those things play together. And this album in particular had a lot of really like striking Old Testament imagery in it that was kind of surprising to me. There's a great line in one of the songs. I'm trying to find it. But it's in a bridge, and he says something about holding the mic up to this pillar of salt, but it won't sing. which is a reference to, oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the names. I believe it's not Job's wife, but it's a biblical character. They're leaving Sodom and Gomorrah, and God tells them, don't look back on the lifestyle that you were living in Sodom and Gomorrah as I destroy the cities, or I'll turn you into a pillar of salt. And his wife looks back at the city and is turned to a pillar of salt. And it's kind of interesting in the context of what we've been talking about with the album of like, he's kind of going to people, it sounds like from the lyric, he's going to people in his life and trying to like move them forward, but they're so stuck in the past of what Brand New has been that they're completely paralyzed by it. And he's like trying so hard to just move on with his life, but everyone around him is like forcing him not to. There's another really great point in that vein on the track Same Logic, where he talks about every kid you see starts crying, so you stop going out for walks, which is about like running into fans on the street and them like telling him all of these sad stories about like what his music has done for them, and he's like, I really just wanted to like have a nice day. And like that's super real to me. Like I don't know why I've never like been a famous songwriter, but I can like really like, it's just so interesting to like, you know, I feel like we all have those people in our life that hold us back or that pull us backwards, and he's not very kind to those people on this album.
For WWDC like it's your birthday?
Do you have strong opinions on Snapchat filters?
Are you tired of 3-hour-long tech podcasts?
Then you should check out 10-Minute Tech Talk. It's a show Emily and I make every single Tuesday where we catch you up on a week's worth of technology news in just 10 minutes. You can find it on Apple Podcasts, Overcast, Google Play, and basically anywhere else you can get podcasts. We were all listening to Brand New's back catalog a little bit before you got on here. Can you talk a little bit about how the sound and the style has changed over the years?
I mean, obviously it's changed. Like I was saying, their first album, Your Favorite Weapon, that was like fairly traditional pop punk sounding, in my opinion. Like, you know, whatever poison's in this bottle will leave you broken, sore, and still. Like the usual, just like kind of, just more nasally, whiny. Plus, like that whole first album, like had songs about his ex-girlfriend. I think that he wasn't over because there's that song. I think it's 70 times 7, and he's mad. I think that was him being mad at one of the guys from Taking Back Sunday for stealing his girlfriend.
Uh-oh.
That's a very like mid 2000s thing to write a song about, or early 2000s, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys remember that though. They had that feud or something. It was that feud where like Taking Back Sunday fans and Brand New fans like hated each other because those two didn't like each other. Like two people's like weird late teen squabble made a whole two group of people like hate each other who didn't have anything to do with the situation.
Sounds like teenagers to me.
Yeah. So, you know, that was like pop punk. So Deja and Tandu came out, and there were still like the elements of pop punk and everything, but that's where they started getting like more on the, I call it like more post rocky, like alt rock side, especially. What was it? There's like the songs like Guernica and It's Good to Know If I Ever Need Attention, All I Need to Do Is Die, and things like that, where they start doing more like, I don't know, felt out, like effect heavy bridges and things like that. They kind of let like the mood sink in. And then Devil and God came out in like 2006. I was a senior in high school, and that blew everyone's fucking minds, at least where I was, because it was like on the darker side, and it touched on the themes of religion and losing your faith, or kind of like waking up from that type of thing, and also trying to find yourself in all of that. And especially, it also talked about kind of getting older and the things that come with that. Like, there's a lyric on Devil and God that's I was the glue that held my friends together. Now they don't talk and we don't go out. I used to know the name of every person I kissed. Now I made this bed and I can't fall asleep in it. I don't know. They did a lot of great like progressive like just song structures in that with like really cool breaks, bridges, really great choruses, and I don't know. It's just, they seemingly got space, like added more like effects, got darker as time went on, and kind of like he matured in how like Jesse Lacey matured in how he wanted to convey his like woes and sadnesses, I guess is the best way I can say it, because like hearing him talk about like a girl basically through the majority of like the first album, and then now we're here where he's talking about like how he's a grown-ass man and he's just like, I've got fucking regrets that I can't get over, but I guess I better get over them. Like, but it's still like not a finality in how he phrases it. It feels like it's something that he knows he's gonna have to keep fighting against for, and kind of like weathering on against for the rest of his life.
That's an interesting thing that you touched on, because I feel like the overwhelming feeling I had at the end of this album, and I listened to it twice in a row, so I did it like front to back, is even listening to it like in a cycle like that, it doesn't really like tie a bow on anything. Like, it feels unresolved is the feeling that I get coming out of it.
Yeah, like it feels.
Anybody else feel that?
Like I was gonna say, it feels as far as like an album, like a released album, it feels like it is their last one. But from that narrative perspective, which I think is what you were talking about, it doesn't feel like it's wrapped up. Because like literally the lyrics of that final song are, "It's never going to stop, batter up, give me your best shot, don't know what you want, batter up." Like it's just like a cycle, like a endless cycle, is what that portrays to me.
Since I don't think I've listened to the full thing about as much as you have, Taylor, because clearly you did your research, you did your homework. I feel like you have a better understanding of like how it feels to go through the entire thing, whereas I kind of like picked and chose between different things. But I mean, even still, I think my opinion still stands that it's still like very. Like, it's not composed like a traditional album where the last song is like this 20-minute epic where it's like fucking like feels like a finish anyway. Is that, but you're talking more almost lyrically, right? You're speaking more about that, more so than.
I think
Sonic.
Both lyrically and a little bit sonically. Like, finishing on a ballad is a pretty good way to say, like, the album is over, But it does have that kind of, like, droning note at the end that I think is the same note that, like, the same drone that opens the album. I'm not really sure. I need to go back and check that again.
No, I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah. But that kind of, like, listening to the final track and having it just kind of drone out like that, for some reason it just feels like it's leaving you without a strong musical resolution there. Lyrically, it definitely does, but I don't know about musically.
Because, I mean, like, this is the last song they're ever going to play. You're like, well.
That's right.
If I could jump onto that, I don't have a strong opinion either way about the finality of it, just because I haven't listened closely enough to get a real sense of what it's all about and whatever. But I feel like maybe a little bit we're kind of searching for like that bit of finality, because we want it to be like a nice clean wrap up of like, this is the last brand new and this is the last thing we're going to get from them, and so it has to end in the perfect way. And I'm not saying like you're wrong or you're right, or just like, I think maybe it's like when you look for things that you want to see there, they show up, and I think that's maybe a little bit what's happening, or maybe I'm wrong, I don't know. But I don't know.
So that's interesting, Ben, because I want to ask you a question about that, about one of our other favorite bands from roughly the same time period. I feel like a lot of people, when Blink-182 went on hiatus and ostensibly broke up forever and obviously didn't, a lot of people looked at I'm Lost Without You as like a fitting finale for that band that ends on like a really loud, bombastic, like kind of grand finale fireworks note. How do you feel about that? Like,
That I feel like that's the same thing. It's like that was obviously was not their intention to break up I guess when they wrote that song, probably, I would assume at least. And I think it happened, and then people were just like, "Oh, well, it makes so much sense now." Like they wanted to find meaning in something that wasn't there, and so they put the meaning to whatever was there. I'm not like trying to knock like your guys' interpretation of the ending or whatever, but I'm just throwing that out there that I don't know, maybe.
No, I think that's really interesting.
For something.
I think you make a good point there that
Yeah, I agree.
music fans
too.
definitely do that. We all, read more into the music we like than it probably deserves.
If they had not come out and said this is going to be our last album, would you have the same opinion about how it felt? So it's I don't know. It's weird. It's weird how we interpret music.
So, gathering some final thoughts on science fiction here. I guess let's start with Tyler. What's like your key takeaway from this album? Do you think you're gonna revisit it? Where does it sit for you?
I am trying to find not necessarily a reason to listen to it again, or I'm trying to find the context in which I would find myself really I need to listen to this to brand new discography, because I feel like I'm not going to understand this last album without listening to the other albums, or at least a majority of their other albums. I feel like I'm not gonna. I mean, but that's the same with every band, right? You're not gonna understand the progression if you just start at the end, because you're not gonna know where they came from, and so. I say I want to listen to it because I know how important it is to a lot of people. It's going to be a struggle for me to do it. Maybe we should, I feel like there just needs to be, an actual book club for it. and that would, make me do it. But I don't think, in my personal listening habits would I probably go to brand new on purpose. Unless it's, it's maybe a cold winter day and I'm driving home and I don't really feel like getting jazzed on something, You gotta knock out that one Fleet Foxes album, so it's pretty hard to beat.
So I'm kind of on the fence. I agree with Tyler. This is just it's not my style of music. So I'm not gonna I feel like every time I've tried to get into brand new, it was because my friends really like brand new, and I knew there was something powerful about it, but I never really clicked with me. But then I never really listened to their any of their music analytically, or tried to find a meaning in any of it, which I did with this one. And it's obviously very raw music. It's it's very personal, and there's a lot of stuff going on, which I thought was really cool, and I never noticed that before. So I think I would revisit it for that, but also at the same time, like Tyler said, I feel like I wouldn't completely get it because I don't know the progression of brand new from when their first album came out, 2000, 2001. It's almost 2 decades worth of music that I don't know. I want to listen to it, but I feel like unless something draws me to it, I'm not going to.
Probably for the better. It's very sad. I don't know. Maybe I'm just perceiving it more like that. Because actually, I won't be long-winded about this, but there is a song on this album where it's about apparently Jesse Lacey being look, I've got a positive message. It just sometimes comes out as sad sounding. I think it's the second song. The lyric literally is, I've got a positive message. Sometimes I can't get it out.
I'll let Zach finish this question out. But for me, this is probably an album I'm going to revisit at some point. I really appreciated it in a way that I haven't really appreciated brand new before. I think I really kind of wrote them off as just another band in the emo scene for a while because I listened to mostly their earlier music when it first came out, or when I was in high school and people were into it. But these last couple albums seem like they're much more in my wheelhouse in terms of they're They're a lot deeper. The lyrics have a lot of symbolism in them. There's a lot of different musical styles, like Ben talked about earlier. So, I mean, I could definitely see myself revisiting this album, but I do think that I'm going to have to be in a very specific headspace to do it. Because as we've said throughout this conversation, like, this is not fun music to listen to. Like,
but
it's interesting music
it's
to
music
listen to.
that people like. If people love this band.
It's,
Oh yeah, it's interesting music to listen to.
I agree with Taylor.
but
This
it is
isn't
not
like music
fun.
you can just like. Yeah, this is music I feel like you can't just be like, oh, I'm going on a drive down the highway, I'm gonna put on Brand New. Like, I feel like you have to like have like intent to listen to Brand New. Maybe that's just the way I perceive this band, but like I feel like I couldn't just like walking down the street just put it on my phone, you know?
Or you're like
But
cleaning.
that just feels
you're like
impossible.
cleaning your house, and you're like, I'm just gonna put on Brand New right now and vacuum.
What fun?
Like, you
That's
can't
what
put
I
this
did
on
today.
a playlist. You can't be like, hey guys, I want to just take my entire iPod shuffle and just shuffle it with Brand New in there. That's like a landmine. And then you're like, oh, well, I guess I'm sad today. Is that like people probably listen to this band on purpose, just casually. Like, yeah, it's in my car. It's CD's in. I'm gonna listen to it over and over again.
Dude, Tyler, I'm right here.
I'm just
Go ahead, Zach.
because this band would be dead. It would not be a popular band if people didn't like play the shit out of this album.
So, will I revisit this album? That's the question, right? That's what we would-
Or like, where does it leave you?
Where does it leave me? Well, where it leaves me is me basically going through self-reflection and trying to get my shit together, because I listened to this thing that's been basically defined to me as Jesse Lacey, like having regrets after what on the outside seems like a really great, like almost 20-year career. And it makes me kind of like step back and look at like my own things that I try to overcome and what I'm trying to do with my life, and I'm like, fuck, what am I doing? So basically, no, I don't want to revisit this album again anytime soon. I actually today I told myself driving home, listening to it just to refresh myself for this podcast. It's gonna be the last time I listened to it for a while.
That's surprising for as big of a fan as you are.
It's mainly for my own mental health because it makes me too sad. Wah.
Jesus. Well, consider this, I guess, our tentative recommendation from Dude's Brunch. Listen to this album if you feel like you're in the right space to do so, but don't listen to it if you're having a bad day.
This is basically, actually, if this is this metaphor is the best way I can describe this album. It is the requiem of a dream, a requiem for a dream of albums for me. Like, don't listen to it if you're already having a bad time. It'll just make it worse. Like, it's good, but you don't want to expose yourself to it if you don't have to.
We
That's
talk about
such
this,
a bad ref. That's such a bad recommendation.
We keep talking about this album like it's some like volatile thing that's gonna like destroy your life. Like,
It's not. I mean,
not.
it's just
My life
like,
was destroyed before.
So we're going to lighten the mood a little bit here with a piece of pseudo-internet garbage. We've talked about him before. Most people who listen to this podcast probably know who he is. Internet wizard and general creative type Neil Cicierega, famous for his animated videos like Potter Puppet Pals and his mixtape albums Mouth Moods, Mouth Sounds, and Mouth Silence. He's been releasing some demos from those albums that didn't get a formal release, and I wanted to share one of them with everybody, get some reactions, and just talk about a piece of music that might make us feel a different sort of way than Brand New. Yeah, this track's called Man Piano.
Oh god, they're gonna fake me out so hard, aren't they?
Another turning point, fork stuck in the road.
What?
Grabs you by the wrist, directs you where to go.
What?
So make the best as known as one.
I love this is the mandolin in the back.
It's not a question, but a lesson learned in
I
time.
think I'm gonna throw up.
Unpredictable, but in the end is right. I hope you had the time of your life. So take the photograph.
There's a link in the show notes, but this is a mashup of Billy Joel's Piano Man and Green Day's Good Riddance, Time of Your Life. And I wanted to talk about this after our previous discussion because I feel like these are two very reflective songs that people sometimes play at gatherings where you're really supposed to like appreciate the emotional significance of the moment, like a graduation or a wedding or something like that. And by putting these two songs together with the sax line from the Full House theme coming in later,
Yep, that's coming up right now.
I feel like it just completely destroys the emotional intent of all of the songs involved. What do you guys think?
Yes, exactly.
I think it makes it better.
I like how comically drawn out Billy Joe's voice is.
Billy Joe's voice from Green Day?
Yeah, that's what did I say?
Billy Joel, the
Oh.
Piano Man.
Yeah, the Piano Man, in Green Day.
Which is, of course, the joke that's being
what I
made
meant.
here. Tyler?
Tyler is not.
I finally hit the part of the song. I had to speed it up real quick. My favorite thing to do is when a video is like really fucking boring is I like to put it on the 2x speed instead of just scrubbing through it, which usually makes things more entertaining that way. But anyway, this was so painful, which I think is the reason why it's an outtake. Like this is all the songs you showed us, Taylor, are just painful in that you want them to be something different. It's like there's like video compilations of things like just almost like perfectly almost hitting, but like just miss barely, or like like it's not like scratching on like a chalkboard, but it's kind of it's sort of like in that feel. I had previously described it as blue balling me, but I feel like that's probably not appropriate.
Well, you just said it again, so...
I mean, I'm just gonna go with it because I don't know what else to describe this as, because it's so close to being good. The mixes or the mashups are like so close to being like all-star hits, which is why they're not in the thing.
Did someone say All-Star?
That's right, I did. I think the most damning part about this one is that they really slow down Billy Joe's voice to. I'm like, I didn't realize we were listening to a YouTube poop. I didn't realize that was where we're at now. But like, at least like in the Party Rangers one, it's just like you just cut those parts up and it was fine.
Party Rangers, we will also link in the show notes, is the Power Rangers theme with Party in the USA by Miley Cyrus over it. The like combination of slowing the Green Day vocal down while also like allowing it to shift in pitch, because you can, I mean, we live in the future, you can change the speed of things and somewhat maintain the pitch that they're in, but Neil like intentionally lets the pitch drop super low on this Green Day vocal. And so it sounds like this weird demon Green Day almost. And like that's funny in and of its own right. But then when you add in the Full House saxophone, that has been slowed down to like this mournful pitch. It just feels like almost funeral dirge. Which is real weird because it's Piano Man, but it's
Play this at my funeral.
I don't think this should be played at any funeral. I don't want.
I'm gonna haunt the shit out of you if you do not play this at my funeral.
Do you want everyone's lasting memory of you as a person to be Green Day and Billy Joel?
What better way to remember me? Is that not like perfectly Ben Pentecost? Like just that absurdity and shittiness right there in your face, and I'm also dead.
I don't know what to say to that.
And you thought we were done being dark.
Alright, now it's time to wrap the podcast up like we always do with a round of shameless plugs, starting, of course, with Tyler Reed. Tyler, where can the people find you?
Hey everybody, you can find my design work at tylerreed.com, and you can find me on the socials as TDR Design on Instagram and Twitter. See you all soon.
That was very ominous. Ben Pentecost, where can they find you?
I am at on Twitter at Bentecost.
How do you spell that, Ben?
BENTECOST. Thanks for asking, Tyler.
Ba-boom. Zach Schockweiler, where can the people find you and your work?
You can find me on Twitter at Shonkadamus, SHONKADAMUS. That's way too long. I really need to change that. Or you can listen to my podcast, Ordinary Folk. You can find that on iTunes, on Libsyn, on the Google Play. And you can follow that at Ordinary Folk FOU. That's at Ordinary Folk FOU on the Twitter.
And of course, you can follow me on the socials as at TC Olmstead. You can like and follow the show. We are at Dudes Brunch. You can subscribe to our subreddit, r/Dudes Brunch, or hang out with us on Twitch on Thursdays, where we are also at Dudes Brunch. And of course, if you really like what we do around here, you can leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. It helps other people find the show, which may or may not be a good thing for them in the long run. Otherwise, thanks for listening, and we will see you all next week for another episode of Dudes Brunch.
Grandma, can you make me one of your famous grandma breakfasts? And she was like, yeah, boy, I'll do that. And I was like, sick. Can I get that? And she's like, yeah, boy, you get that. And I got that breakfast.